Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful February day here in St. John, Greater St. John. We'll call the meeting to order. And thank you, everybody, for being here with us today. So we'll ask for the first item, an approval of minutes of December 17th, please. Second, okay, thank you. All those on the question, all those in favor? Anybody contrary-minded? Not seeing any. Thank you. And we'll move right into our second item, 1.2, one of our Growing in St. John presentations, which has become a great theme over the last 3-4 meetings. So we're very pleased. I'll turn it over to Mr. Phil Ouellette for an introduction here this morning.
Through your worship, thank you very much. The presenters today for the Growing in St. John segment were developed because we look back at, in 2019, of all the different folks that have come in and provided presentations, and we realized we didn't really have a really strong showing on the tourism industry. And it's certainly a part of our story, our growth story, and is an important part of our growth story. So when contemplating, well, who from the tourism industry would be a really good presenter for that, Aquila Tours came up very quickly as the choice for this presentation. And I'm not going to steal a lot of the sunshine of the presenters, but I did want to share that Aquila Tours is highly, highly respected in the cruise industry and has been named as one of the best tour operators in the world by some cruise executives. The two presenters today will be Danielle Timmins, who's the Vice President Cruise Operations at Aquila Tours, and she's been working with Aquila for years. Her responsibilities include financial management, strategic planning, marketing, and managing inbound cruise. We also have Melanie Colpitz, who, interesting story, her first job was with Aquila in the summer of '92.
Hey, that was a great summer.
Yeah.
I love that summer. Yeah.
Today, she's partner in Aquila and the director of Aquila's Center for Cruise Excellence. Just to give a little bit more detail, Aquila's training programs have been delivered in over 65 different countries. So with that, I'll invite Danielle and Melanie to begin their presentation.
Great. Thank you, Phil. I'm just going to queue up our presentation here.
Don't remind us, David. You're just a pup.
Done. I'm going to assume this is the. So we need to speak into the speaker here, I think.
Yeah, it can move closer to the laptop if that's easier for you. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for having us here, everyone. We really appreciate the opportunity. Growth in St. John is something that we basically work on a daily basis at Aquila. So we're very excited to be here presenting to all of you. So to give you a little bit of background, Aquila was started in 1982. You can see in the picture there, that is Melanie, myself, and my mom. She started the company when I was 8 in 1982, and the three of us are owners and operators of the business. Cruise is our business. Everything we do is cruise related. Some of you who may have known about Aquila since we've been around a while may have known that we used to book travel. We used to do tours to Australia, Nashville. We've done a lot of things over the years, but for the last 12 years, everything we do is cruise related. We've gone through the good to great process and we've really narrowed down our focus. We are the principal tour operator for St. John Shore Excursions. So all of the cruise ships that come to St. John, we do most of the tours for most of the ships. So to give you a little bit of an intro to us, I'm going to try to play this video. We'll see if technology works. It's very quick. It's a little introduction to Aquila and what we do on both sides. It works.
With 35 years in the business, Aquila knows what it takes to create amazing experiences for cruise passengers. Aquila's Center for Cruise Excellence helps everyone in the industry exceed expectations, from destinations and ports to tour operators and guides.
Since Aquila was asked about 10 years ago to take our model and to teach tour guides and operators in other parts of the world, we have today become the standard in the industry.
I love sharing St. John.
Just listen, don't.
Yeah, it's lagging.
1,000 passengers on tour this week. We love to show them the highest tides in the world. The Old City Market, which is built by shipbuilders. We love to take them to the Hopewell Rocks to see the Flower Pot Rocks, which is the icon of New Brunswick, and they walk on the ocean floor. We'll Well, we've been operating in St. John since 1982. St. John is our living lab where we learn all of the lessons, where we discover the current challenges and how to address them and how to keep improving so we can share that. We talk a lot at Aquila about how we can really wow our guests. How can we wow our operators and our guides who are going through our program? So really looking at how we can take their experiences to the next level.
Aquila has trained and certified more than 1,300 guides in 55 countries through its online and in-person programs. Last year, more than 5 million passengers worldwide had great shore excursions thanks to Aquila training.
Our training is all about giving guides that warm feeling, letting them know that they are important, giving them a sense of pride in where they're from and in what they do. In Spanish, we say, esto es muy importante. This is important. It's about empowerment. Once they find out that we're tour guides too, they look at us and they're like, okay, they're like us. Our goal is to teach them that we can make a difference.
Along with its training for tour guides, Aquila also trains tour operators, destinations, ports, and frontline staff. And Aquila is the exclusive training partner of the Florida Caribbean Cruise Association.
When it comes to having the experience made better, the training that you provide throughout the world has made a difference.
We're there to help them. We're not just there to provide a service, and we really care about their success.
All right, so that's a new one where the audio and video are completely off. But we're just going to go with it. I think, yeah. So go ahead.
Perfect. I was going to say this, we'll just go with the flow and adapt, which I think contributes a lot to the growth that we've experienced over the last 35 years. It's just in line with the way we operate. Yeah. So thank you again for having us here today and share our story. And as Danielle mentioned, our business today is really focused in two main streams. And for those of you who are familiar with Aquila and our history here since 1982, I love the story about how Beth moved here from Fredericton and went on a city tour and had already fallen in love with the city and didn't feel like the tour showcased the best of the city, and got home and thought, I think we can do that better. And that's how her business started, and we're delighted to be part of it. We both kind of grew up there. The company started when Danielle was 8, as she said, so in their family they joke that it's the fourth child of the business, of the family rather, the business is. And Dan says sometimes she felt like it was the first child sometimes. I love that. But it's been very much a family business, and I'm very honored that I started working there when I was 16 as a summer tour guide, and really also fell in love with the city and the company and feel really blessed to have grown up there as well. And that today we're moving the company forward. Beth is still involved. She hasn't retired, and she's really choosing the projects that she likes to be involved in best, but the day-to-day operations of the business really falls to Danielle and myself. And so we each basically are responsible for one side of the business to make it very simple. Obviously, everything is more complex than that, but that's the simple kind of breakdown. So on the shore excursion side of our business, we work with all of the cruise lines that come to St. John. We provide the vast majority of their tours, and Danielle will take you a little bit more in depth with what that side of our business looks like. But we've been providing those tours since the cruise ships started coming in the 90s, and today we're really the preferred tour operator for the cruise lines. And then about 13 years ago, we had cruise executives who were really watching the way we were operating and really feeling like we did a great job with the way we trained our tour guides, a great job with the way we showcased the best of St. John and our destination as a cruise destination, and how we operated as an operator. And they came and asked us if we would consider taking our model and sharing it with others and helping other operators learn how to do things the way that we do. So we were honored and humbled and a little bit overwhelmed. We're just a bunch of gals from St. John. And since those years, we've become the training partner for the Florida Caribbean Cruise Association, and we launched Aquila Center for Cruise Excellence. So we provide training programs to tour guides, tour operators, and cruise destinations all around the world. Our main focus is still in the Caribbean. That's obviously the largest cruise arena in the world, and that's where there's a lot of need. So that's where the cruise industry has encouraged us to focus. But in recent years, that's really been growing as well, and that side of our business has seen remarkable growth in the last 2 or 3 years, and we've been starting training in European destinations. Beth was in Tahiti in November, training tour guides there. So Aquila is really reaching out and training in destinations all around the world. And what is so exciting for us is there's no place that we like to showcase more than here at home. This is where our heart is, and St. John is our living lab. This is where we learn all of the lessons that we're now taking into our training with our tour guides and with the cruise destinations and the operators that we work with. And we're spreading the message about St. John in all of the training that we do. All of our trainers start with messaging around where we're from, how we began, and what's special about where we live. So we're really ambassadors to St. John, and also using St. John and our operations here as our living lab to take in training to destinations around the world. Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to take you through a few of the details about the cruise in St. John side of things. So there's been some studies done over the years, and the economic impact to cruise to St. John and to the St. John region for cruise is about 30 million every year, because there's obviously a lot of people who benefit directly from cruise, and then there's a lot of trickle-down effect. So overall, the calculations they've done is about 30 million a year, and I expect that will be growing now because the number of cruise ships is growing every year. So that's a very good story for us to have. These are our primary cruise clients. There are more that come to St. John, but these are all of the big guys. So all of the major cruise lines, we're very fortunate to have all of them come to St. John on a regular basis every year. Plus we have German lines and some smaller niche lines and some luxury, but these are our primary cruise clients. A lot of locals often ask us, why do people cruise to St. John? We get that question a lot. It's one of my pet peeves. So we are, Canada, New England is one of the top 12 cruise destinations in the world. So we have, the Bay of Fundy is definitely one of our top selling features. We get asked every day repeatedly from cruise guests, how can I get to the Bay of Fundy? Where can I see the Bay of Fundy? We get that question over and over and over again. So we're blessed to have the highest tides in the world here, which cause some issues logistically for us sometimes, but most of the time they're a blessing. People love our historical buildings. We've got a little bit of a Boston feel here that American guests tend to love. And we have a lot of really great natural, culinary, cultural experiences here. We at Aquila work hard to make sure we're showcasing the best of our region for our guests. I'm not going to read through all these, but we at Aquila offer over 40 different tours. We are one of 4 operators who work with the cruise lines here, but we alone offer over 40. So we do everything from trolley tours, walking tours, whale watching. We have a scavenger hunt type race through St. John. We go to Hopewell Rocks. We try to give guests basically everything they might want to experience in our region. When you look at our annual kind of impact statistics, just to give you an idea of some of the trickle-down effect, so we operate over 40 different tours. We visit 7 communities, including St. John. We take about 65,000 guests on tour, and of course, when more cruise ships visit, that number goes up, which is great for everybody. We employ about 100 people seasonally. Our full-time year-round team is 9, and then in season, we go up to about 100. We charter 1,200 buses. Those aren't actually all different buses. Those are bus days, but over the course of the season, we would charter 1,200 buses. We bring guests to 60 different businesses. So those are restaurants, attractions, retailers, cafes, you name it. We work with about 60 other businesses. And we bring about 40,000 of our guests to the city market and about 55,000 of those guests to Fallsview Park. So those are good numbers, because I know that when you grow up here, sometimes we take our own city for granted and we're not often good tourists in our own backyard, but guests love coming to St. John and seeing some of these great sites. And now Melanie's going to speak about the other side of the business. Oh, what have I done?
I've got a big voice. I can. So the training that we do, that we learn from our living lab, from the operations that we have here in St. John, has really grown to encompass a lot of different elements of the cruise industry. So we do have an international tour guide training program that gives tour guide certification that's recognized in the industry around the world. We have tour operators that we train with designations, frontline customer service training, and how to work with the cruise industry. And we've even been asked by the cruise lines to branch out into things like culture of respect, which has to do with harassment and how to treat guests properly. Storytelling and how to tell your stories and use those stories in a way that's very appealing to our guests. So really different ways to enhance the cruise destination. We also have cruise readiness training for ports and destinations about if they're new to cruise or how to get the best and maximize the opportunities that cruise bring. So these are all things that we've learned how to do here through partnerships with the port and Discover St. John, who are integral. We all work together to try to keep these cruise ships coming in and have really solid partnerships with them. So all of these types of lessons that we learn by operating our shore excursion business here are now translating into training programs that we're taking to destinations around the world, reaching everyone from the folks who are working in the retail shops and the vendor market that you go to in Jamaica and the taxi that you get into in the Cayman Islands, right through to the stakeholders in the ports and the destinations who are really working to grow cruise in their destinations. So it's very thrilling to think about the impact that we're able to now have in the industry around the world based on the business that has started right here in St. John. And the next slide, I think, will just show you a little bit about some of the destinations we've been in. Just last year alone, we were in over 37 different destinations around the world. A lot of them were in the Caribbean doing training for these folks. And as I said, this part of our business is really growing a lot. So we're looking that in the next few years, we'll be growing our own business in terms of employment, having more folks working here, also contracting trainers away to make them ambassadors for what we're doing as well. We're really looking at how best to keep this business growing forward on this international stage, but we will always be based here in St. John. It's our living lab. We can't have one without the other. Okay, are we good?
So our top 3 priorities, and this applies to both sides of the business. Number 1 for us is creating a culture of service. This is crucial to us, both on the shore excursion side to show our guests the very best of St. John and the Bay of Fundy, but also to help create that culture of service for the destinations that we work with around the world. The impact on guest experience, people are not content to just sit on a bus and just look at things. People want to really experience the destination. They want to get to talk to locals and they want to get their hands dirty. So impacting the guest experience is a really big key for both what we do and what we teach. And then learning from our living lab. As we've said, this is our living lab. We are never going anywhere, and we use everything that we learn here in St. John and we take that to the world. So a question that I also sometimes get asked, how can we help? How can St. John help? Continuing to invest in tourism. The city has always done a great job of investing in tourism. We're very grateful for that. So continuing that investment. Tourism dollars are outside dollars, which is really great for investing in our community. Continuing to support the great work of Port St. John and Discover St. John. We work closely with both. Because it's once the ships have decided to come here, then that's kind of where we step in, but we also work with them to make sure that we are giving them good reasons to come here, to come back, to get good ratings. So we do a lot of sales and marketing support with both of those organizations, and we're trying to make sure that the cruise lines are wanting to come here because they know they're going to have a great experience and their guests are going to love it and they're going to get good ratings and they're going to make money because that's very important to them. And then recognizing the value and continuing to invest in some of the assets that we have here in St. John, like the city market, like Fallsview Park, and Fort Latour, and some of those great city assets where we're taking thousands of guests every year. And that's it. Any questions? Thank you so much for having us.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for the high energy, as expected, presentation. It was fantastic. Deputy Mayor, I think you're first up.
Oh, thank you, Ursula. I just want to say thank you to all of you. You do a great job. You started out small, and now you're pretty big. And, it's just, you're so involved, and you are very supportive of the city. And I've seen you in action down at the terminals when the ships come in. Yeah. I mean, people are lined up to go on your tours, and you're so good at dealing with people, and they want to, they have hundreds of questions, and you're able to do that, and you're out there, and you can just tell from your faces that you're really enjoying what you do. And the other great thing you've done is that many of the people that work on your tours are from St. John.
Yes.
Right. And they're people that have had a career in St. John, regardless of what profession they come from, and you've taken them and trained them and made them into ambassadors for the city. And, really, I don't think there's any other city that has what you have done for us here in the port. Because, on Port Day, when you had the cruise ships down there, heavens, you're just right there, and you're always right on time. You're always, everybody compliments you, and you work well. So I want to say congratulations to all of you.
Thank you.
Because I know you have a lot of people that have worked for many years in St. John, and they work for you now, and they work for the world because they tell everybody about St. John. So you do a great job. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Shirley. We are always looking for more tour guides after, when you retire.
Make that little plug if you don't
There you
mind.
go.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Deputy. Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Richard. Yeah, well, I got up in one of your pink buses there, and I was thinking of driving it, and I said, no, not this council. Anyway, no, you guys do a great job for the community and the businesses that you visit. I'm sure that Moosehead on the west side is one of them. And, people would certainly love to drop in there and have a moose light once in a while. I do have a couple of, besides the fact that we're going to have to enlarge our port, I mean, that's the problem that we're going to have now. We're going to have to get a bigger port to support the work that you're doing. Fallsview Park. There was an issue with buses over there not having enough room to park. Has that been resolved?
No,
It still hasn't been resolved.
no. On a single ship day, it's not too bad. On the double and triple ship days, it's dangerous, to be honest,
Yeah.
because there's not enough space. And so we have tried to sort of create rules for how the buses should operate down there, and we try to get all of the other operators and bus drivers to follow the same rules so that we're all kind of working together.
Yeah.
But of course, we can't technically control anyone but ourselves. So it's a concern that we have. We would love to address it. The ways to address it, besides having somebody down there to police it, are infrastructure, like taking out the whole middle area, turning it into a bus parking or a bus turning area, which I know costs money. But Fallsview Park is one of our top safety concerns every year. And it gets worse as we get more cruise ships and more double days and more triple ship days. It's definitely a concern.
Okay, I'm glad you mentioned it because, with everything that's going on, these things don't necessarily come to the top.
Yeah.
But, if we're going to expand I think that's something that we're going to have to look at.
Absolutely.
No, look, I'm glad you came in. It's a heck of a story, good
you.
news story for St. John and tourism.
Thank you.
And thanks for dropping by.
Thank you, Councillor McKenzie. And can I just clarify, we don't actually operate the pink buses. We get that question every day. It's literally the only thing we don't do, but I get it every day.
But
So
you still can't drive it, John.
I got in the seat and I thought, you know what, I just couldn't do it. I said, "It's not
I
for me."
wouldn't drive a bus either. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
perfect. Thank you, Councillor McKenzie. Anyone else? Councillor Hickey.
Thank you, Your Worship. And thank you all for I'd certainly echo the comments from the rest of the councillors around the table, but, more so for me, I think one of the biggest impacts from you guys has been your community involvement too, and just your investment in not only keeping your business here, but, keeping your hearts here too, and that, whether it's Beth's involvement with the Fort Latour project and things like that. I mean, she pretty well single-handedly orchestrated that operation and securing funding and things like that.
Yep.
So that certainly has a big impact for me. And, as we look forward, and I guess a message to council is that really investing in tourism, I think from our perspective, also means investing in our city and investing in our heritage and protecting our heritage and maintaining the dynamic nature of our uptown and protecting what that means and what that looks like moving forward. So that for me is a lot about what our tourism is too, right?
Thank you. One of our mottos is a rising tide lifts all boats. And that's part of why we love it here and we try to grow it here, because if we are all growing, every one of us is benefiting from that. So it's not important for us, just us to be successful. We want everyone to be successful.
Right.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you. So we'll just wrap up. Thank you for the excellent presentation. I spoke on the weekend to one of the cohorts from the Wallace McCain Institute, and one of the things they did at the end of the meeting, which I was saying to the city manager, it was they shared key takeaways, rapid fire, 2 flip charts, and they just started throwing up. So, sorry, that came out wrong. They started throwing up ideas. So, in your presentation today, here's mine. First of all, I think it's an incredible example. I've heard you all speak about reading, Good to Great and reinventing. So it's an incredible example of reinventing. Likely you could also teach at business schools just on that component alone. I love the component of St. John, or the element of St. John being the living lab, wowing your guests, the impact that you've had over 5 million people. The fact that you just nonchalantly say you're doing all the training for the Florida Caribbean Cruise Association, but represents probably 95% of the major cruise companies in the world, that it's a world-class organization right here at home. I love that you've embraced that you thought and you think you can always do better. And I'm curious about where else the model that you're perfecting can be applied. I think you've shown us that, to quote my friend Mr. John Doyle, that your attitude is in the altitude, he would say. I think that because of work that you've done, that Port St. John has done, that, Discover has done, that when I had an opportunity to meet the Vice Chairman of Royal Caribbean and we pitched Adam on a very innovative fundraiser, it was a very quick yes, which raised the single largest amount of money ever for NBYO. I think you would probably get some of the credit for laying the foundation of St. John being looked at as such an amazing place. I think the market data you shared today on the market in Falls View Park was incredible. Thank you for that. If you need more trainers to be in Fiji between January and April, I'm your guy. But on a serious note, that customer excellence, the ferocious commitment you have to your, to your philosophies, your attitudes, your actions. I think you've hit it out of the park today in terms of sharing a great news story about a world-class organization with world-class leaders who are making a world-class impact, who are headquartered right here at home. And lastly, I think you are helping us with civic pride, because I know many of your seasonal operators, and when they put your vest on and they're going off for duty and they've been so well trained, I know they're walking about 3 feet off the ground on the way. And I bumped into one of your operators, one of your staff the other day, and he had his vest and he said, I just can't wait until cruise season starts again. So thank you for that.
Oh,
Okay.
thank you.
Well, thank you for your presentation today.
Thank you.
Okay. Receive and file, please, colleagues. Thank you. And on the question, all those in favor? Anybody contrary-minded? Thank you. All right. Well, we're on a high today. Thank you. So next item is we will invite our team from Economic Development Greater St. John to the podium to give us our 2019 year-end overview. And sure, okay. Mr. Andrew Olin.
Afternoon,
Welcome.
everyone. We'll just wait to get ready. Yeah. Thanks. So, good afternoon, everyone. I have a few opening remarks, and then I'm going to pass it over to our CEO, Ron Gaudette, who's actually going to do the PowerPoint. So, a simple message for you is that Economic Development Greater St. John is meeting our commitments. We have clear priorities across 4 areas: workforce, entrepreneurship, business innovation and attraction, and telling the Greater St. John story. We have clear and concise key performance indicators, which are based on SMART objectives, so that's specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. Ron is going to provide a full update on what our 2019 results were, as well as our 2020 objectives. We are coming forward with monthly, quarterly, and annual reporting. And I would encourage those who have not read our letter to the community. It's in your package. I would say it's balanced. It's not all good, but it's also not all bad in terms of that. And we are spending a lot of time connecting with the other entities that exist in the economic development ecosystem, the ACOAs, the AONBs, and the particularly the development agencies from Moncton and Fredericton. Those are it's fundamental that we have all those relationships. We're very appreciative of the 20% of our budget, which comes from the City of St. John, but we have to maintain good relationships with all of our funders. I would say, folks, that St. John has momentum. I'd say it's probably momentum with a small m, not a large M. In 2018, for the first time, the population of the St. John CMA exceeded 130,000 people. Page 19 of this document speaks to interprovincial migration. For the first time in many, many years, there are more New Brunswickers moving to the St. John CMA than folks from the St. John CMA who are moving to the rest of New Brunswick. If you look at Moncton's growth over the last 15 or so years, it was really about folks from northern New Brunswick moving to the south. We're starting to see folks from other parts of New Brunswick move to St. John. I think there's two fundamental changes which are occurring. The first is that St. John's image as a gritty industrial city is starting to evolve. I think that the great work that's been done on the tourism file that we just were exposed to, as well as what's happening in Uptown St. John, is contributing to that evolution in the image of St. John. And then secondly, I think that St. John is starting to become seen as a city of opportunity. There's currently about 1,500 open positions in Greater St. John. Some of our largest employers have many opportunities. And these aren't jobs, but they're actually careers that these employers are offering. And that's why we believe telling the Greater St. John story is so important. We need to change perceptions externally, but I think more importantly, we need to change perceptions internally. Too often, when someone new to our city encounters a resident, the first thing they hear is, "Why did you move here?" Economic development, Greater St. John is devoting extra resources to one area, and that is our innovation district. Ron will speak to that more, but we really believe in this uptown cluster and the ability to change the St. John story. This chance for business, academia, and entrepreneurs to collide, it could lead to substantial growth. It's where we're putting our extra time. In terms of extra dollars, this will come from outside funders, whether it's provincial, federal entities, or the private sector. In conclusion, I'd like to thank our volunteer board of directors and the great staff we have at EdgeSJ, led by our CEO, Ron Gadet. And so my final words would be, we have momentum. It's with a small m, and we're working very hard to make sure that's momentum with a large M. So with that, I'll pass it over to Ron.
Perfect. Thank you, Andrew.
There's a couple of extra of these, I think I'll just hand them. Is that for the media? Thank you. I think we're good. All right. Well, thank you so much, Andrew, and your worship, councilors, senior city staff, city manager, John, really pleased to be here today. And I do want to recognize, as Andrew said, the support of our board, represented today here by Andrew Oland and Andy McPherson. As well, I have some staff with me, Sue, Allison, and Janice, and the others are busy at the shop, but they're here in spirit. As a growth committee, I can't think of a more pertinent mandate for the city of St. John, the region as a whole. But let's be honest, the heart, the engine of the region is the city of St. John. you all are, and we all are going through challenging times. We're going through an evolving economy based on a very rich history, but challenging to get from that to where we see is that sort of panacea land. More importantly, not more importantly, but equally importantly is, the structural issues that you're dealing with as a city. And we as an agency are painfully aware of your pain points. That being said, today, in a bit of a perhaps strange way, I stand here extremely optimistic of the potential of what this region can evolve into. And I know, like all of you, very, very proud of a deep economic history that was and needs to become, again, sort of the pillar of the New Brunswick economy as a whole. So how do we do that? Really pleased that just about a year ago, last week, I guess, January 27th, 2019, Andrew and I and other board members and staff stood before about 100 community leaders. And after a year of research and discussion and focus groups, we presented a 3-year economic strategy, a 3-year economic plan to the region. During that time, the vision of that was consistent long-term growth for the St. John region. And as Andrew aptly pointed to, we talked about focus on 4 particular areas, but 4 very germane areas. Workforce development. We could spend the next week and we wouldn't touch the surface of all the issues around workforce development. That is not a unique, inherent challenge for the city of St. John. That is a global issue, expressly pronounced in North America these days. So to be a small city wrestling with provinces and being up against the Torontos of the world, the Vancouvers of the world, the Calgarys of the world, not only do we have to be doing good stuff, we have to be doing great stuff around workforce development. Secondly, a more robust startup culture. So if we look back at our history, St. John has always been an entrepreneurial town. It's always been an entrepreneurial city. We've made things, we've invented things, goods and services, and we've exported those across the world. I heard a quote just yesterday, somebody saying, and this person would know, he's with one of the major accounting firms. He said, you really can't have an economy if you're just simply serving the local marketplace. To have a robust economy, you have to be export-oriented, export-focused. And to do that, we need to continue our history of startups. And is that going to sort of lead the new economy? It's going to be an important element of it. Maybe 25, maybe 30% of new growth has to come from a startup culture. Increased business investment and innovation was our third pillar, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But, if your local companies don't have the capacity, don't see the capacity to grow, even if not in their local markets, but the growth externally, and as we look at our leading companies, that's what they're doing. They continue to innovate, they're continuing to find outside markets. We need to support that. And finally, the fourth pillar for us was marketing Greater St. John. Telling the Greater St. John story from an authentic way, from the standpoint of building on the great work that you just heard about from a tourism perspective. But we're more than a community that wants visitors. We want people that want to live here. We want people that want to work here. We want people that want to study here. And we want people that want to invest here. As Andrew mentioned, we also committed to reporting in an authentic way. Andrew, when he spoke about our annual report, he said, You know, there's some good, bad, and ugly in there. The reality is, what's in here is the reality of the day. And as much as I'm proud of the work that Economic Development Greater St. John does, I don't see it our role to ring our bell, to pat our back, and to say everything that Edge is doing. Our role is to promote the attributes of the City of St. John and the region of Greater St. John. So we talk about some of our systemic challenges in there, but we also talk about where things are moving forward. I'm not going to go through this slide deck. We gave you a hard copy of it. I want to point out maybe 4 particular slides. And the first one is let me see, call it up here, strategic goals. This was our 3-year objective when we presented the strategic plan last year, to increase employment at 2.5% per annum, to increase the labor force at the same rate per annum, to increase GDP, that's the gross domestic product, the output, if you will, of the region, at a greater rate than that of the province. So for the last decade, perhaps 15 years, we've been trending along the same sort of trajectory as that of the province of New Brunswick. As an urban center, with the capacity that we have, that's not good enough. Frankly, the St. John's, the Moncton, the Frederictons need to be doing better than the province as a whole. And supporting, pulling the rest of the province with us, as opposed to the other way around. And finally, increase consumer confidence. So to that end, how have we done? A year later, almost exactly a year later. Highlights for 2019. When we presented with you last year, we had a goal of filling 350 on-fill jobs. These were jobs that had been on demand, on offering, if you will, in excess of 6 months up until. So I'm very happy to report that in excess of the 350 jobs were filled. That was working diligently with about 22 industries in our region, in our city, but filling those jobs. That work is going to continue in 2020. Currently, there are 887 active clients clients interested in working and living in St. John, and we're working with them through a database and again connecting with these companies to get them connected to real jobs. In terms of the second pillar, business investment and innovation, I'm going to be perfectly honest. 2019 was not the stellar year when it came to investment attraction, when it came to inviting new investment into our region. What I will share, because that sounds negative, what I will share is in the first quarter of 2020, we believe that we're more than compensating for that. When I say we, I'm not talking about Edge, I'm talking about, O&B, I'm talking about our companies, I'm talking about, we've had some pent-up demand, and I can tell you we're hosting a number of companies that are looking at investing in the area, so more to come on that. On the innovation side, we worked in 2019 to try to give some definition to what we mean by an innovation district. And we worked very, very closely, as you know, with the University of UMB SJ to realize bringing the MBA program uptown and to relocating and enhancing our incubator for companies along with that. So when I turn to the next slide, I'll talk about the details of that, but that was a great deal of effort in that regard in 2019. Entrepreneur development, 39 new companies started up, almost exclusively in the city of St. John, I might add. 67 jobs were created. Folks, those are the companies that you walk by, that you support every day. you may not have known, you may not realize that they've gone through an entrepreneurial training program, that they've been part of an incubation program, that they applied for and got an impact loan. But these are small companies with a big vision. And some of them will grow tremendously. Others will employ a few people or a few dozen people. But it's an important part of growing your economy. And finally, in 2019, we didn't just talk about telling the Greater St. John story. We embarked on creating some creative. We didn't have a big budget, but we think with the budget that we had, that we were able to tell the story of folks from St. John that have very, very senior jobs in St. John, and they could be anywhere, but they've opted to be in our city. So people like this, and we call that the Ask GSJ campaign. And then we have another campaign called We Ask, and that is interviewing and profiling people that have recently relocated and moved into the area. And they talk about what it's like to move into a new region and to be part of our collective family. So that's 2019. On 2020, this is a 3-year plan. We're trying to move the yardstick incrementally, and 2020 is not going to deviate from the plan in 2019. It's only going to build on the traction that we got in 2019. So the areas of focus remain the same. 2020, we're working with the city, we're working with the other municipalities as we all try to realize a new vision around economic development and what does that look like, and how can EDGE lend its support to that process and to that outcome. So specifically, we have specific slides in your package. I'm not going to go into detail because you have it in front of you. But for each, workforce development, business investment, and innovation, marketing our region, and supporting an entrepreneurial culture, we have clear goals and objectives and targets for 2020. Those are all in front of you. That's where our effort's going to be, and we hope to be back next year at this time reporting on success of that. I did want to give you a visual of two things. So, 2 weeks ago, January 23rd, we had in excess of 400 people out. The mayor spoke, Andrew spoke, the president of the university spoke, our MP spoke. And that was a historic announcement. The MBA program being redeployed uptown, us putting our new incubation center in there. This will be opening in either mid-April or early May, but that's what it will look like. Along with that will be some entrepreneurial programming. So why is that important? We see it as a critical first foundational piece in the development of this thing we call an innovation district. And what do we mean by that? We simply mean bringing post-secondary education, bringing governments at all level, bringing industry, and bringing NGOs in a tangible way to thinking about how we build our companies, how we build our organizations, how we build our city, how we build our region, and how we market that to the world. I could spend, and I would love to come back and spend all the time talking about this innovation district. Right now, I can tell you we're leaning into the description of that, what it means, what it's going to look like, what it's going to feel like, and then how do we go and tell the world about it and invite them to be a part of it. But we cannot overstate the importance of this first step. Relocating the MBA program uptown. We're also currently working well with the community college to get them to be part of this vision. So much more to come on that. And with that, Your Worship, I'll hand it back to you, but.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Gaudette. Mr. Olin, thank you. Questions, comments, council? Or committee, excuse me? Okay, Deputy Mayor, first up.
Oh, wow. Anyway, thank you very much, Andrew and Ron, for your presentation. I guess if you could, I was at the UMB SJ announcement, and could you just go into a little bit more detail on that? Because that was the first time that I heard that Edge was involved in it. I think, Andrew, you spoke on it that day. And I just wondered how you're putting that together. You've said you're going to have, I assume, MBA students, and they're going to look into what's really going to be the outcome and what they're going to do. If you can just explain a little bit more, because I think that's very valuable. I think that the MBA program is in where it should be. It's in the uptown. It's a good place to be, and I think it will do great things. So, can you just tell me your connection a little bit more?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. As I say, we've been working very closely with the university to, as you know, there's been a vision around this for close to a decade. Sometimes, the timing has to be right, the partnerships has to be right. So we worked closely with the university to realize what would it take to repurpose that building. And that building has been completely reconfigured inside, and that work still continues. It also required a partnership so that we could demonstrate to the board of directors of the university, to federal stakeholders that were investing some funds in this, that we were creating a value add. Because you have to remember, the MBA program had been existing for some time. So what were we going to do to enhance it? At the same time, our incubator had been existing for the past 5 years. How could we elevate its footprint on the region? So through our discussions, we said, wouldn't it be cool if we could bring these elements together as a bit of a focal point? And you're right. There will be a tie-in between some of the MBAs that are taking an entrepreneurial stream and the incubator. And we're talking to the university about coming up with some really creative programming around that. But the real tangible is we have 93 MBA students that are now based in the center of the city. They have access to companies like JDI, Irving Oil, Cook Aquaculture, Communitech, and many others as well. They have access to organizations like ourselves and Develop. So it is a true partnership. We're looking at how we build on it, but the immediate is that MBA students have a better way of immersing themselves in the community at large and seeing how they might be part of our future going forward. Right now, of the 93, 80% would like to stay in the area. Currently, about 18% are staying in the area per annum. So we need to do better. Is this going to be the answer? It's going to be a part of the answer. Beyond that, we need to be really creative about this innovation district. How do we bring more industry, government, research colliding in Uptown to support continued growth?
So does part of your funding help that? Do you help? Are you involved with a little bit of funding from Edge with
Yeah, okay. So thank you. Firstly, we did not fund the repurposing of the building. We did work to get to access funding to do that. There are no new monies. We were renting in one location. We're renting in another location. We have secured additional funding to put new and enriched programming around entrepreneurship. But that all comes from other sources other than the municipalities.
So you did that training before or somewhere else?
We currently run 9 programs in entrepreneurship support. 2 of those will be run out of this new center.
Okay. And the last time I recall that you were in before council was when you were trying to match people to job vacancies
Yes.
with a number of employers in the city.
Yes.
And you said that you've created 350 jobs last year. So, yeah, so I'm just wondering, at the time when you were in before to talk to us, it was a big issue. It was a big issue that a number of companies in the city could not find the right people with the right skills or the requirements for jobs. So now that there's 350 jobs, I mean, is this still an issue in our area that people are not able to find the proper skilled people to work?
So, great question. And Andrew spoke about, the positive news along with the issues and the challenges. The good news is those companies were able to hire 350 people and more. That didn't stop the issue. So today we still have the issue of companies that are looking for skill sets and individuals that at this point cannot meet their demand. So we're working very closely with industry, government, closely with post-secondary education and training, with ONB, with industry, with the universities, with the college, and we're trying to deal with that on a number of fronts. But I would suggest to you today that this is not going to be a quick fix, nor is it going to be something that, as we make better, goes away. As the community evolves, as our industry has confidence that they can grow, this is going to be an ongoing issue. This is a new reality.
So, but you feel that you're working towards it and that it is being, to some degree, successful?
Absolutely. And we talked about consumer confidence. We don't know. It's going to be a few months before we can measure consumer confidence. But I don't need to get on a scale to know if I gained weight over the Christmas season. I don't need to measure my kids to know if they got a little bit taller. We have momentum in our city. We have momentum in our region. We have companies that are growing. We have companies that have jobs on demand. We have companies that would like to grow. We have companies that would like to invest in our region. We have people, there is a bit of a buzz, and the mayor spoke about momentum at our announcement on the 23rd. And to Andrew's point, it might be a small M momentum. I'm about as confident as I can be that we're going to turn that into a medium size and a big M. We collectively over the next number of years, but it's going to take tenacity and conviction, and it's going to take the municipalities deciding on their commitment to economic development, the model that they want to support, the degree to which they want to fund it, and then hold the feet to the fire to get it done. But I am extremely optimistic that we are in a good place. That we're going to get it measured as we can measure these things, but there is a palatable momentum currently.
Okay, I'm going to jump in. Thank you.
I'll come back around.
Well, we've got 2 more agenda items and we're running long, but Councillor Hickey, I think you want to jump in?
Yeah, just quickly, thank you, Worship. And I love the, thank you, Ron, for what you said about it. I love the MBA announcement. It's a really big step to really bring UNBSJ from its campus to the heart of the city, and I think that makes a big difference for me. And when it comes to really developing that culture of entrepreneurship here. I think it's something that we don't always have, and that renewed focus on it is really important. And, you know, for me, the defining moment of our evolution as a city and really transforming that narrative will be taking that, you know, dirty, industrial, shrinking city narrative and transforming that into, you know, a gritty industrial city with a lot of heart, with a story to tell, with a lot of heritage to celebrate, and a really bright future of growth, which is what I think we have and what I think we're coming on to. And I think that's the vision we're all starting to adopt. So thank you for your work, and I'll leave it there.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Deputy, you had a quick follow-up then?
Well, I just, Andrew said that we pay 20% of the budget. I just sort of had an interest in where the other 80% come from. I don't know if you have a breakdown, but.
Yeah, it would be the other, and this is rough. So City of St. John's about 450. The other municipalities about 300.
325.
325. Probably $1 million from Alcoa.
Yeah, depending on the year, other government partners that support programming and project specific would be in the area of 1.5 million per annum, which would be a split between Alcoa, PEDAL, post-secondary education and training, and Opportunities New Brunswick, as well as others, but those would be the key.
So that money you would apply for every year?
That money, so the entrepreneurial training has grown exponentially. From, you know, we've been at this for a number of years, so it's an ongoing partnership to fund that stuff. We also administer an impact loan that has in excess of $1.2 million in the community now in loans to start up businesses. So that's an ongoing pot that gets replenished. So
that's good. Well, that gives me a basis.
yeah, and we can get you the exact numbers. Janice is here. She knows them by heart. I should have bounced it over to her. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you, Deputy. Okay, thank you, Mr. Gadet. Just a couple of rapid-fire takeaways as well. Momentum. I prefer the big capital M, but I appreciate the comments today. I really like. I know when we first received a copy, I love the accumulation of data here. And you know, look, I'm a believer from a leadership perspective. You celebrate the wins and you jump on the back of the opportunities to take them to another level. So it's a really great assembly of key data, and I think we need to continue to do that as a group to pull that data. I love that we're optimistic for the future. I think we all share that in common. I think the work around the workforce development, and I think, you know, Deputy, you were sort of drilling in, it's complicated. I mean, we have organizations that say they need people, and we have people, and for some, I describe it's two ships passing in the night, and I know you're working on it, and I know our population growth team are working it, like a bunch of folks are working on it. So, you know, I wish it was simple, but I know it's not simple, and we'll need to continue to work on it. But in my mind, you know, we had a narrative where some time ago, the whole narrative was that we have no jobs in New Brunswick. I'll take this problem any day. It's challenging, but we find ourselves in a position now. We have a premier who has boldly said we're going to be 1 million people by 2040. It's 230,000 people more than we are today. And for me, we have an economic opportunity for Greater St. John to be the strongest economic region in Atlantic Canada. You know, and people said, well, but what about Halifax, Mayor? No, we can be the strongest economic region in Atlantic Canada. And I think what we're building on is momentum to build on the success of all of the organizations. It's not about no one's doing good work, but how do we supercharge that success? That's the conversations that we're having now about aligning and supercharging. And, you know, the City of St. John, you know, invests $2.5 to $3 million a year as it is in economic development. We want to continue to invest because we have to grow. But I think what we have is the potential to unlock unlock this greater region in terms of alignment between ourselves, the new evolution of OMB and all the various other groups. So I see nothing but potential. I could go on also for hours, Mr. Gadet. I have a number of other questions, but for me, I'll sum up. I think we do have momentum. I love that we're chasing even more momentum. I'm very optimistic, and I think the conversations we're having right now are all the right conversations about supercharging, and focusing on enhanced outcomes, doing a better job of telling our story, because we know, folks, that people are moving to our city every day. And they walk around on the street, and you can tell who they are. They have huge smiles on their face, and they cannot believe that you can have a quality of life, a job, a career, a sense of community, the restaurants, the bars, the arts and culture, the coffee shops, and you can, within 4 days, you can know half the people walking down the street, and that is a sense of community and belonging and affordability that I think is our niche, and so I'm super excited. I think we're having all the right conversations, and I would say thank you for your work, and let's keep chasing the capital M. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, you're receiving file, folks, please. Thanks. Okay, all those in favor? Anybody contrary-minded? Not seeing any. Okay, so I guess with 15 minutes, folks, I do need to probably finish close to on time, so we'll move on to our next item, strategically communicating growth, and that was a verbal update, and I've forgotten you've told me who I was supposed to go to. Oh, to Ms. Moore, okay, who's sitting in Mr. Fudge's seat, I think. Let me see if I can figure this out. There we go. No, hold on. You just hit it yourself. There you go. You got it.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me. As the mayor has said, I'm Nancy Moore. I'm the manager of internal communications at the city and also manager of special projects. I have been tasked with helping to tell the city's story of growth, so I'm very happy to be here. I've got a very short verbal update. I just want to sort of give you the state of where we are and then talk a little bit about what I'm going to be doing to support that. So just in preparation for my role, which has been about a week, however, you should know I've always been very, very interested in growth. I think everybody who knows me knows that I'm a long-time St. Johner. Last year, I did a quick look at what had been issued out of our communications office. Last year, we issued about 53 PSAs, news releases, or social media posts that were related to growth. We have a number of channels that we put them out of. We have 15,000 Facebook followers. That was an increase of 20% over last year. 14,000 Twitter followers. That's an increase of 30% over last year. And we have about 10,000 email subscribers through our email notification system. We also distribute and pitch to various media, so we disseminate information that way. We also have a number of channels that our media folks who have left are not with us. We do infographics. Our total infographics for growth last year had 1,400 page views. We do various things through council meetings, so for example, Heritage Awards, Developer of the Year Awards through Chamber. You had a lot of Neighborhood Action Committee, because you were very busy with the neighborhood plan last year. PAC meetings, we also communicate with Development St. John, Enterprise St. John, and then individual councillors who help share through social media. Now, I just wanted to pull it way back and talk about some stories that have been in the media, provincially, nationally, and internationally in St. John about the last month. This was nothing that came out of our office, but this should make you feel pretty good. We were listed as one of the top 10 tourism destinations by vacaymagazine.com. McAllister Mall expansion news, we are one of the few malls, like one of the few sort of suburban kind of malls that is expanding. Many of them are sort of pulling back. We had record housing sales in St. John in January. In fact, I heard there was a bidding war over a building on Coburg Street. Visual Arts Magazine, which many of you probably don't know, but it's a national visual arts magazine. We had a large part in an article on narrative architecture, and that's regarding heritage in St. John, so we got a lot of national profile out of that. Demographica International Institute, we were named the 6th most affordable municipality for housing in the world. And then as our folks at Edge SJ talked about, we now have an MBA program that is part of our downtown. So those are stories, again, that went beyond the reaches of the city. So as far as my own mandate goes, I've met with Philip, Jacqueline, Amy, and we're going to talk about a short-term and long-term plan. So for the short term, I'm going to amplify the city's ability to share optimistic growth news to employees, council, St. John community, and our surrounding communities. To do that, I am going to start developing year-end infographics for the growth targets. I'm going to support Amy, we talked about this, in consistent quarterly reporting that's consumable. I'm going to strike a committee of our own staff to look at the little things in the community that we might want to highlight. We're going to develop an inventory of promotional materials, identify opportunities to leverage distribution of materials we already have. So that's looking beyond that sort of those distribution channels that I talked about. The city manager has a mantra for us, and his mantra is it's all about growth. One of the things that I really hope to do is demonstrate how all the rest of the areas in the city support growth. For example, we've got an awful lot of street reconstruction and work in our capital projects that's going to go in to support the neighborhood plan. So we've got a couple of streets down in the South Central Peninsula that have been identified for street reconstruction, and that sort of paints a picture of having a plan and setting about to make it become real. So for the long term, we're going to map out the scope of what we hope to achieve in 20 and 21, including the types of stories we're hoping to access and the audiences we hope to share them with. So we do intend to update our Smart Growth Report. We will look to leverage our heritage assets, knowing that that is something that is very popular. We will better integrate our efforts with our economic development agencies. We will work to promote development opportunities inside the region and outside the region. We are, Christine's right there, so I'm just going to talk about a project where there's going to be some development site signage. You'll be seeing that soon. I think I'm correct, Christine? Yes. And we're going to look at identifying some community champions. So with that, if anybody has any questions or comments, I'd be happy to take them.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hickey?
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing big. I guess my question, and maybe I'll just frame it as a point because it's a pretty big question for you to answer. But the big thing from my perspective is really reframing that narrative on growth in the public. And I think it's one that we all share in our, council priorities that are above us here, and certainly in looking to the future, making sure that narrative is reframed is important. Because even in the situation, today, I'll give you $5. I bet you I can guess what the headline in the paper is going to be tomorrow. That growth isn't quite as great as we expected, right? And really, if as a city we can reframe the narrative to say that, in our context, in the context of what we've been doing for the last 20 years, these are big, monumental changes, and we're catching up. We've got a lot of catch up to do, but we're getting there, and the attitude is changing, and the narrative and definition of what it means to live in St. John is changing too. So that's big. That's really my thought, and I think it's shared around the table and from staff too, I'm sure.
Can I comment on that?
Oh, yeah, please do. Just didn't want to put you on the spot.
No, that's all right. At the beginning of my presentation, maybe 20 years ago, I would have talked about media that we used and what kind of circulation that they had. Now I'm framing it in terms of our social media reach. So wanting to probably leverage that, leverage community champions, which I think is really important, and to see what we can do ourselves. So we have a larger opportunity, I think, to drive that narrative. But yes, I agree. It's a big challenge.
Right. Yeah, thank you. Well, I guess I'll just say to the media that re-entered the room, you just missed a big one. So follow up with the
exclusive, yeah, big exclusive for you this afternoon. Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Well, I just want to say, Nancy, you got a lot of work cut out for you. I wish you the best. When you look at people in the community, you want to sort of highlight somebody that's done something, whatever. Maybe you can ask around and get somebody that has really done something that hasn't been highlighted before. I often find that in St. John, we repeat. We give a lot of credit to a lot of people, but sometimes we do it over and over and over again. There's a lot of people in St. John that do a lot for St. John, but they don't get front page news. But yet, the bottom line is they've contributed a lot to this city over the years, and they're still doing that. So I know that's a big ask, but, you can think about that, because sometimes people, we kind of honor the same people over and over.
Can I comment again? Well, one thing that I did want to bring out that is I really appreciate the fact that the Growth Committee has been bringing these growth stories forward. Who would suspect that we have a World Cruise Training Center down the street on Prince William Street? And I know one of the last meetings you talked about the folks coming in that did the airport expansion to the restaurants.
Yeah,
so I think we all definitely play a part in that. But I really appreciate the fact that the Growth Committee started that and has been doing that. And I think that's got a lot of traction. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Deputy. Okay, so thanks very much, Nancy, for that presentation. For me, my couple of comments would be, first of all, I'm thrilled. Secondly, because there's so much, I think, great news and great content to share, and I think it all has to fit together. And so I appreciate your comments on short, medium, longer term, but certainly having some discussion around strategy. And then I'm not going to let him comment, but I'm going to put the city manager on the spot and say, to be successful on this, you also have to have resources. You have to have both the human, which we now have, but you have to have the financial resources for an overall corporate communication strategy. And I think we all agree it's incredibly important, and I know the city manager does as well. But you need those resources, you need the people to put that in place. And we as a committee and as council also need to understand that we need to have those resources in place so that we can proactively share out the hundreds and hundreds of great, probably monthly, weekly opportunities that we have to share out good news, and a lot of great work that's been done in this committee from day one. All the committees, council, all led by our great staff. So I think we want to. The focus is getting that M to the capital M, right, City Manager?
Your Worship, members of the committee, what Nancy Moore has spoken about today is fundamental to what we want to do in terms of celebrating growth in the city, et cetera, making people more aware of the growth agenda. But it is nested within something that's within our 2020 work plan. And within our 2020 work plan, we are developing an overarching strategic comms framework for the city and all the functions of the city. And the reason I bring that up is because of your comment, Your Worship, that within that strategic comms framework, which will come to council for approval, much like every other Keystone document, there is a resource bill associated with that. And we will have to address the resources associated with doing comms properly.
Perfect, thank you. Receive and file, please, folks. Thank you. And on the question, all those in favor? Anybody contrary-minded? Okay, thank you. And folks, this last item, I do have a two-stop today, so I just wanted to explain it. I did ask to have it added to the agenda, but I think today it's going to be difficult to have a meaningful discussion, so I would ask maybe that we just push it to our next meeting. But I just at a high level wanted to have a discussion. First of all, it is a topic that is being discussed, affordability, what does that mean? And I think folks can come at it from many angles, many different angles. So it does require some time. Just in the last short period of time, Ms. Hamilton and I have had some meetings with some provincial representatives. I have a conference call this afternoon with our MP, just to get up to speed on some of the national programs that exist. And certainly I would say this, this committee has been committed from day one to try and increase the supply and the mix and of housing choice. But so it's important. We want to make sure the public we know it's important, and we want to have some good discussion here in terms of policy and programs and so on that exist, so that we can perhaps come out of a good dialogue with some actions that we can take. So I think we'll leave it there for today, but we'll maybe I just ask for someone to table it here in a moment. Did you have a quick comment, Councillor, you want to make?
Yes, Your Worship. I think that it's probably one of the more important issues that we need to talk about. So the next agenda that it goes on, could it be put towards the top instead of the bottom?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. And I just have a tabling motion then. Oh, sorry, Debbie.
Well, I'm just adding, I don't know whether you wish to or not, but I think you should hear from St. John Nonprofit too, like how they do their programming and how they do their housing. I mean, they have a lot of experience. They work in our community. They got over 550 some units that probably are subsidized. I'm not sure of that figure, but it might add to it.
Thank you. Absolutely, Deputy. I think the idea again today, folks, was just at a high level. I know Ms. Hamilton was prepared to give us, some high level overview, for us to have some discussion, for us to put on the table some of the items that, our own thoughts, and then we likely get into some sort of key actions in terms of, some of those meetings. That would certainly be my thought. I mean, I've had a series of conversations in the last week with experts from across the nation that I wanted to share with you some of those thoughts. So most definitely, we would lean on local experts, Deputy, for sure as well. Councillor Hickey?
I guess just off the deputy's point to staff, is it reasonable to have community presentations with that item? Or is it easier just to keep it at a staff level and then comment from there?
I'm certainly happy to reach out. I think it would be important to hear context from staff on the municipal role in affordable housing. I do, certainly St. John Nonprofit Housing and others play an important role in the delivery of affordable housing within the city. I did reach out to them and give them a heads up that it was going to be on the agenda, and I think it would be appropriate for them to attend the next meeting and perhaps provide additional context to the committee on their role in that area.
I think, thanks. So we've just ended up having sort of the conversation, but I mean, I just very quickly, I'd say, I'm very cognizant of roles and levels of government and who's responsible for what, but at the same day, what innovation and what ideas can we bring to the table, what's working, what could be enhanced. So we'll, we will still table it, I guess. We'll ask for a table.
I'll table it to on a
next meeting, top of the list. Okay, thank you. Second. Okay, thank you. On the question, all those in favor? Anybody contrary-minded? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Before we break, it's 1:59. A lot on the table today, a lot of discussion today. Thank you to everybody that's in the room. We have, I believe, gotten a lot done in the last, 3.5 years. We've completely reframed the conversation. We talk about growth every single day and what matters to us. We should be very proud of that. And so to David and Nancy and Amy and Jacqueline and Phil, and now Ian and Kelly and everybody else involved, Christine in the back of the room, and to the committee members, thank you. And let's keep the pedal to the floor. And I'll call for motion to adjourn, please. Thank you. And on the question, all those in favor? Anybody contrary-minded? Thank you. Pedal.